There's a specific kind of person who remembers when the world wasn't constantly buzzing. If you were born between 1970 and 1989, you grew up in a space that doesn't quite fit the loud generational narratives. You're not entirely defined by the analog past, but you weren't shaped exclusively by the digital world either. You remember when making plans required certainty. You also adapted when plans became fluid, adjustable with a single message. You didn't just witness transformation, you were shaped by it. And that timing left psychological fingerprints. Most people build their identity against a stable background. The tools, the pace of communication, the social expectations, these usually stay consistent from childhood into adulthood. For you, they didn't. During your teens and early 20s, when identity solidifies and long-term patterns form, the world accelerated. Communication changed. Information multiplied. Social norms shifted. As a teenager, connection required effort. If you wanted to talk to someone, you called and hoped they answered. If you made plans, you committed. If someone didn't show up, you waited or you left. Conversations weren't archived. They dissolved into memory. Then suddenly, everything became instant. Messages arrived immediately. Replies were expected quickly. Interactions were documented. You experienced both systems while your brain was still wiring itself for adulthood. That matters. When major environmental change happens during formative years, the brain doesn't just adapt to new tools. It builds flexibility into identity. You learn to pivot rather than anchor yourself to one structure. You didn't just learn technology. You learned recalibration. That's why many in this age range handle change with quiet steadiness. New platforms, new systems, new expectations. You may not love them, but you adjust because you've done it before. But adaptability carries a subtle cost. When you grow up watching the ground shift, you don't assume stability is permanent. You stay mentally prepared for updates. Even when things are calm, there's an awareness that they might not stay that way. It's not dramatic anxiety, it's readiness. Your relationship with privacy was shaped differently too. You experienced adolescence when mistakes faded naturally. Awkward phases weren't permanently recorded. Embarrassing moments lived in memory, not in databases. That gave you space to evolve quietly. You could reinvent yourself without old versions resurfacing with a search. Now, identity is often documented in real time. Because you remember the contrast, you approach visibility with caution, not fear, awareness. You understand that exposure has weight. Privacy, to you, isn't secrecy. It's stability. Independence is another defining thread. Many in this age range grew up with more unstructured time. You handled boredom without instant digital distraction. You solved problems without immediate online answers. Boredom forced creativity. It strengthened inner dialogue. It built tolerance for discomfort. When your mind isn't constantly stimulated, it learns how to wander, and wandering builds depth. Later, when speed and constant access became normal, you adapted. You embraced convenience, you learned efficiency, but you never fully forgot what uninterrupted time felt like. That's why many of you value boundaries. You appreciate connection, but not constant access. You understand that being reachable 24/7 isn't the same as being present. You can live in both worlds. And you can hold contradiction without feeling fractured. Technology improved life. Technology complicated life. Hard work matters. Hard work doesn't guarantee stability. Connection is easier. Connection can feel thinner. You don't need one side to cancel the other. You've lived long enough in transition to accept complexity. Economically, your timing shaped you as well. Many born between 1970 and 1989 stepped into adulthood during financial uncertainty. Industries shifted. Career paths became less predictable. Stability felt conditional. Early adulthood is when we build confidence in our competence. When that period overlaps with unpredictability, it leaves a lasting imprint. You may notice it in your planning style. You diversify skills, you keep backup options, you hesitate before overcommitting. Not because you lack ambition, but because you've seen how quickly circumstances can change. At the same time, unpredictability strengthened your resourcefulness. You became comfortable learning new systems, pivoting, reinventing. You don't expect guarantees, you expect to adapt. Your relationship with authority evolved too. You grew up when institutions still carried weight. Then you watched trust fragment. Information became decentralized, narratives multiplied. You didn't begin cynical. You became discerning. You respect competence. You question inconsistency. You evaluate before committing. It's not rebellion, it's experience. You've seen enough change to know that titles don't guarantee integrity. Romantically and socially, you straddle two eras. You remember when anticipation was part of connection, when you couldn't instantly confirm someone's thoughts, when silence didn't automatically signal rejection. Then communication accelerated. Response times gained emotional meaning. Availability became symbolic. Because you remember both systems, you approach relationships with nuance. You don't panic over space, but you understand the power of digital signals. You value presence, but you don't demand constant proof. That balance creates steadiness. You are also among the last groups who experienced extended periods of being unreachable. No constant notifications, no expectation of instant replies. That built comfort with autonomy. Today's culture rewards availability. But you remember when availability wasn't required, so you tend to guard your time more intentionally. You connect, but you unplug. You engage, but you protect solitude. Because solitude once shaped your identity, you understand its importance. You maintain a strong inner world. Living between eras can feel isolating. Too digitally fluent to reject modern systems. Too grounded in earlier norms to dismiss what came before. You see gains clearly. You see losses clearly. That perspective doesn't make you superior. It makes you integrative. Growing up during acceleration trained your nervous system to tolerate ambiguity. You learned that norms evolve, that tools update, that expectations shift. So when change happens, you adjust. Psychological resilience often depends on flexibility, not rigid certainty. You embody that flexibility, not because it was comfortable, because it was necessary. There's also a quiet nostalgia woven into your experience, not a desire to undo progress, but an awareness of what disappeared along the way. Slower rhythms, natural anonymity, undocumented mistakes. You don't resist the future, you just remember context. And remembering context changes how you move forward. You embrace efficiency, but value depth. You engage digitally, but protect privacy. You adapt, but you don't forget. So what defines the psychology of those born between 1970 and 1989? Integration. You integrated independence with connectivity. Skepticism with openness. Speed with reflection. You remember before. You function in after. And in a world that continues to accelerate, that dual awareness may be one of your greatest strengths. You don't assume permanence. You trust your ability to evolve. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing. And if you'd like to support more deep dives like this, becoming a channel member genuinely helps. There's more coming. Different topics, same depth. I'll see you in the next one.